right, welcome everybody. Welcome back to the channel. I'm your CT Realtor, your local or your statewide realtor for Connecticut. Today we have a special guest. His name is Stephen Robert of Bedrock Credit. He is a credit repair guru, been in the business for a very long time. I've heard his name and I've actually worked with him with some of my clients before. Has great stature within the community and is definitely going to be able to help us understand the benefits of credit, how to get our credit right, how to keep it right, and use it to leverage what we ultimately end of the day need, which is real estate or investments just in general. So with no further ado, Stephen, welcome and definitely introduce yourself.
Andre, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. As you said, my name is Stephen Robert. I'm the owner of Bedrock Credit. For the past 14 years now, I've been doing credit education and restoration, teaching people about how credit works and working with those individuals that really have a lot of issues. And today it's all about the education. We're going to be able to kind of talk through what's currently going on in the market environment in regards to credit and what are the do's and don'ts of how credit all works. And the one thing that I want to kind of throw out to you, which I absolutely love, is your Monday motivation. And I'm sure enough people don't applaud you for that, but I think it's absolutely fantastic that you're out there doing that, putting out those positive vibes. So I appreciate that, and I know that you bring that to your clients as well. So looking forward to it's a great segment here to teach you a little bit more about credit.
Absolutely, I appreciate that. You know, sometimes Monday's the hardest day to get started, so I figure some good words of advice gets everybody kind of in the best mood, especially to get a cup of coffee, start the week off right. Biggest question I think we'll start off with is, what is credit?
Right. So the biggest thing is not only what is credit, but the types of credit, right? So there's credit reports, there's credit scores, but then there's actually what the banks use, and they use FICO credit reports and FICO credit scores. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of websites out there using all these, here's my free credit report and here's a free credit score and all this information. And people get all excited and hyped up and they go to all these different places, they pull their credit and they're like, wow, this is fantastic. And now they're like, wow, I'm gonna go buy a house and this is great. And now they walk into the bank and they say, look, I have a 700. Bank says that's great. They pull credit and it's really a 620. Ooh. And they're just flabbergasted. They have no idea what just happened, right? And what is the big situation here is that these free websites are giving you credit reports and credit scores, which are completely different than what mortgage companies use on their side of things for actually qualifying you. And the biggest difference is that these credit reports and credit scores generally only use up to 2 years worth of data, potentially more, but generally 2 years worth of data. They have score range models from anywhere from 100 to 1,000 points, and they're completely arbitrary. Everybody has their own different model that they use. When the banks pull credit, they're pulling something called the FICO credit report and the FICO score, FICO standing for Fair Isaac Corporation. They've been around for years. They have a monopoly on the mortgage world, and the FICO scores are proprietary algorithm that's used, 7 years worth of history, and a score model from 300 to 850. So you want to make sure that you're looking at that. And then on top of it, we have to take it a step further, because not only is there a FICO score, but there's different versions of the FICO score. So really? Yeah, and a lot of people get confused by that, because the next step is, oh, okay, that makes sense. Here, I have my bank statement, or I have my credit card statement. Here's my FICO score. And now they go to the lender. Hey, look, here's my FICO score, 700. Now they pull credit. It's really 670. Well, it's a FICO score. It's the same thing you guys use, right? No. Not necessarily. Here's why. What is currently all the banks and lenders in the U.S. are currently using is something called FICO Classic. FICO Classic was developed in the year 2000. I know that because the guy who helped build it, John Alzheimer, is the one that's trained me over the past 14 years. He also worked at Equifax, and he kind of gave me a little bit of an understanding of what they did in building that scoring model. Now, in 2008, they built FICO versions number 8. 2014, they built FICO version 9, and now in 2020, just last year, they built FICO version 10. So they keep building newer versions and passing that out to the public. And again, that's what you're going to see on your bank statement or credit card statement. But those newer algorithms are not the same classic model that the mortgage companies use, because all the mortgage companies are using is FICO Classic, because Fannie and Freddie buy the loans on the back end, and that's what they're using. So until Fannie and Freddie decides to change their model, they're going to be using FICO Classic, and therefore all banks generally need to use that as well.
Okay. So what are credit scores compared to the FICO scores? How does that look?
Drastically different generally. And
Okay.
generally, the credit scores are going to be higher, not all the time, but generally they're going to be higher than the FICO scores. And even within the FICO scores, FICO version 8 or 9 or 10 could be a higher score than FICO Classic. And the newer models are definitely better predictors of risk. But
Okay.
again, nobody's using those newer models. They pass it out to the public and they put it on your bank statements, and that's fine and good. And if you're at an 800, quite honestly, in a FICO Classic, you'll still be very high as well. It's
That,
really becomes where you're like, oh, I'm in the 600s, 500s, low 700s. Hey, look,
yep.
I'm at a 680. Oh, I should be
Yep.
able to qualify. That's what I need to get to. And that's what FICO 8 says on your bank statement. And now the mortgage guy pulls credit using FICO Classic, and it could be 40 or 50 points lower. And now you can't even qualify.
Yeah, and that makes a big difference, a huge difference in qualifying or not. So
Exactly.
compared to the free websites that we talked about, what would be the best place to start off with if I'm looking to get involved in buying a home, purchasing a car, etc., to know what is my actual true credit score that you're saying the banks would be pulling from to get that classic? What would be the place for to go?
So if you're going to a lender, they're obviously going to be pulling credit, but that's going to count as an inquiry. That's going to drop your score. So if you want to look yourself and just kind of make sure you're on the right path, only one website. It's called myfico.com. myfico.com. Myfico.com is the only website to give us the same information the bank uses. Doesn't count as an inquiry, doesn't hurt your credit in any way, shape, or form. However, you do have to purchase a report.
Yeah.
So you could go there every day and buy a new report. You'll get the same information the bank sees. You just have to pay for it every time you do it, but it never hurts your score to go to that website and look.
Okay, and that's usually typically the most accurate.
That is the only website. Now, keep in mind, on the page number 1, what is it? What are they going to give you? FICO score version 8. So you have to go down to like page number 16 or 17, and it's going to say FICO scores used in mortgage lending industry. And those are the same numbers that you would see that the bank pulls. So don't get caught in the trap of, oh, I pulled it. Here's on page number 1 my scores, because those are FICO 8. You have to actually look down to find the mortgage scores. But if that mortgage score shows you at a 628, and the mortgage company pulls it today, that's going to still be the 628. Those are identical.
Now, in that FICO score, what goes into creating that number? So how does that get built?
There's 5 components, and we can talk briefly about them. There's a lot of information to say about them, but let's just kind of talk about the overall. 35% of our scores are past delinquencies. So basically your payment histories, or if collections pop up, anything in regards to that. 30% of our score is debt utilization, meaning how much money you owe versus your credit limits. So if you have a lot of high credit card balances, that's going to keep your scores down. 15% of our score is the average age of the credit file, which basically means how long is your longevity of your credit history, including all accounts, revolving, mortgages, student loans, auto loans, whether the accounts are open or closed, doesn't matter. All of that is getting calculated into that average age of the credit file. 10% of our score is the perfect mix of credit, which is they're looking for a mortgage, home equity line of credit, 3 to 5 credit cards, car loan, and student loans. And then the last 10% is inquiries. And that one always is funny to me because people are so concerned about inquiries, right? And they say, well, I have a 520 score, and it's because there was a loan officer that pulled my credit 5 times. No, you have a 520 score because you have derogatory information on your credit, and there's some type of problems that you have to deal with, whether it's late payments or collections or something. Inquiries within themselves wouldn't bring your score all the way down to a 520.
Okay, so it sounds like debt utilization and your payment history make up over 60-65% of your score. So more than half of your score right there is how you use the debt, how often you're paying the debt, and paying it on time. So payment on time, I know most people have a due date on their bills, but if you go past that, how does that affect them on their score as well?
Sure. So if you have a credit card and it's due on the 15th and you pay it on the 20th, you could be marked as past due. Now, the good thing about past due is once you've actually corrected that and now you've brought it current, that the credit bureaus can be notified and your past due immediately go away, and any drop in the score that you would have immediately comes right back and your score goes right back to where it should have been. However, if you do on the 15th and you don't pay it until the 16th of the following month, you are now technically 30 days past due. So not only do you have the late fees that you have to deal with and all of that stuff, and you have that past due, but even if you corrected it at that point, now you have that 30-day late payment that's on your credit. any 30-day late payment could drop your scores as much as little as 20 points or to over 100 points, depending on what your credit profile looks at.
Wow. So that's a really big swing.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely incredible. And I'll never forget it. I had a guy last year, January of 2020, he came to me and he said, and he was a mathematician type guy. And he's like, I've had credit for like over 31 years. And he ran all the numbers with all this stuff. He had one new mortgage late payment. His score was at a 680. And he was on time, 99.999998% time. And that one late payment hit him over 100 points.
100 points. Oh my God. That'll make somebody lose their dinner and their appetite.
Exactly. So you got to make sure you can pay everything on time.
Okay. So what I heard is, even if I missed my credit card payment due is on the 15th, as long as I make that payment for the 16th of the following month, I can still be okay and not really have a big hit on my credit. But if I go past into that next month, now I have consequences.
Exactly. And those consequences can stay on there for up to 7 years and impact you.
Jeez.
And now keeping in mind that initially, maybe 100 points, and then a year or two later, maybe now it's only 80 points, now 60 points. And as it goes down through that 7 years, it diminishes. But still, like, to have that type of negative information on your credit report and impacting your scores, it changes your whole life because it can impact everything.
Absolutely. Now, you said debt utilization, and I've heard this in the grapevine of I'm pretty sure like everybody else. You've done YouTube University, Google University, and with credit cards, I was always told, you get a $1,000 credit limit. You don't want to spend any more than 30 to 35% of that balance because you look less of a risk. So if your balance is $1,000, you don't want to spend any more than $350 any given month, just so as that boosts your credit score. Is that true?
Yeah, so that's definitely one of the thresholds. But the other people think, well, if I get to under 30%, my credit's going to be amazing. No, because you still have 29 more percent down that you could go. Keeping in mind that every percentage you pay down is going to help boost your scores. So if you're at 31% and now you go down to 29%, yes, you go into a lower bracket, and therefore it's going to help calculate things a little bit easier. But the same could be said for under 15%. And then if you're at 15%, you go down to 14%, you're lowering your utilization, and therefore you're lowering your risk overall. Bottom line is, yes, paying down to certain thresholds is certainly good, but the way that I tell people to use their credit cards, and I understand financial situations come up and it is what it is, and sometimes you got to do it, but ultimately the best way to use your card, if you have a $300 limit or a $30,000 limit, I don't really care. You should be putting $20 or $30 on your cards every month, wait for the bill to come in the mail, and pay it in full. By doing that, you're maintaining a very low debt utilization percentage, and you're also protecting yourself from financial problems. Here's the biggest thing that I've seen happen time and time again is that clients will say, okay, I have a $300 credit card. I want to show them that I'm able to use it and pay it off. They put $300 on there, they pay it off. They put $300 on, they pay it off. Well, number one, what they don't realize is the credit card companies only update the credit bureaus one time per month. So whatever that number is when the bill shows up in the mail, that number is what's going to be at your credit bureaus for the next 30 days. And people get stuck in this cycle of, well, I maxed out my credit cards, I got my bill, I owe $300, I pay it that day. Well, what do they do the next 3 weeks? Spend. They get their next bill, it's maxed out. Now, and they're perpetually stuck at this 100% utilization, and that's hurting their score. More importantly, what if you're going along like this and then all of a sudden something happens? Job loss, crazy world happening right now, right? COVID, right? You never know. And then all of a sudden you can't pay that bill. And now you're stuck paying the minimums. And now you're paying the minimum, and the interest rate is like 20 to 25%. So you're getting hammered on that. And eventually, guess what happens? I can't afford to pay this. Now it goes late, 30 days late, 60 days late, 90 days. It eventually goes into charge off. Before you know it, you're trying to build your credit. Next thing you know, you have a charge off on your hands and your score just went into the toilet.
Okay. So if I get into that happens. I do the wrong thing. Life happens to me. And then next thing I know, I have a delinquent account that gets into collections, which is what you're talking about, charge off. Now I have a collection account. What should I do? Because you and I kind of spoke about this before. You do I'm gonna call certain companies and they can tell me I could just dispute it and it goes away, and then I can restart my credit. Or what is the actual situation that's gonna benefit everybody to learn, so that they don't get to that point, but if you have charge-offs or in that position, how do I get myself out of it correctly?
Right. So and to your point, right, there's a lot of companies out there that say, well, we're just going to dispute this and hope it goes away. And in reality, after doing this for 14 years, that's not a viable solution to try to make this debt go away. And what I always tell people is, if somebody owed you $1,000 and they wrote you a letter and they expected you to fill it out or whatever, just kind of like you're doing with the disputes, are you going to forget about that $1,000, or do you want to get paid? I want to get paid, right?
Getting paid.
So these collection companies feel the same way. They want to get paid. So now it becomes a situation of, well, the debt is owed. Fine, I owe the debt. Now I'm getting myself back financially. What can I do to get myself into a situation where I can actually get this debt rectified? And people start saying, okay, fine, let me call this company. Let me see if I can negotiate a settlement. I'm trying to get it done as quickly as I can. Boom, here's my debit card. Let's go ahead and try to expedite the process. Mm-hmm. That is highly ill-advised, because you never want to be giving out your personal financial information. You always want to protect yourself. That's number one. Number two, you always want to get something in writing. You never want to be calling and making any type of payment arrangements or anything like that where they're just kind of telling you that what they're going to do for you. You want to see something in writing before any payments are made. And then when you are ready to make those payments, that's when you want to say, okay, how can we do it so I can protect myself financially? Well, that's where a money order or a certified bank check could be helpful. So at least now you're protected. And then there's additional methodologies that we can use to not only make sure that the balance goes down to zero, but to actually remove the account off the credit report, which is another big misconception. People think, well, if I owed a collection and now I paid it, now it's a zero balance, it's okay, it's not hurting me anymore, right? No, it still very much is hurting you. And if it's still on your credit report, it's hurting your score. And more importantly, the way the system is built, which I know sounds a little wonky, but if you have an older account, let's say the collection was from 2018, now things are so much better financially, you want to take care of this and handle this properly, and you call and pay them, and it goes from open in 2018 to paid as of 2021, that's going to drop your score. And the reason it drops your score, or can drop your score, is because it's updating something called the date of last activity. So even though paid is better than open, because it now becomes a more recent event, that's what negatively impacts your scores even more. So a lot of people have this misconception, oh, if I pay it, it's going to help me and it's not going to hurt me anymore. And it's guaranteed that if I pay all these things off, my score is going to go up. And then that's not the case at all. I literally just had this conversation over last week with a client that was very frustrated, that had paid all their collections and their score dropped about 70 points. And I looked at it and I was like, yeah, your data last activity updated, and that's what made it more recent. And the other side of that is it's going to take a lot longer now to remove that negative data, versus if we're able to control the process and work with the client and make sure it gets done properly. And that's one of the aspects of what myself and Bedrock Credit offer, is to make sure that we're doing these things properly.
Got it. So now let's say, had some things happen, had some collections, had some trials. Life happens for everybody.
Yeah, it does.
I'm going to start the process of rebuilding my credit score. I call you, say, okay, here's where I'm at. We look at it. It is what it is. No emotions about it. How do we fix it? What would be, because I've been told you want to start either secured credit card or, one of those $300 credit cards, something like that. What would be the first step of that building block after we start working, or once we start working with your company?
The most important thing to realize is that everybody is different, and everybody's situation is going to be different. And one person might get cleaned up in 3 months. Another person might take over a year. Everybody's an individual, and we fully understand that. And that's why we offer a free consultation to analyze their credit report and put together an action plan to be able to say, listen, here's what's in front of you. Here's the negative dispute counts. Here are the negative collection and charge-off accounts. Here's how we have to address these. To your point, yes, you need to build and establish some positive credit history. So you need to open up a secured credit card and go through that process, because if we are in there removing all the negative stuff, but the there's no positive accounts to counteract that, then if we take away everything that's negative, you're not going to have a score anymore, right? So we need to have you open up a credit card to build an established credit history. But the saving grace to understanding here is that anybody's credit can be fixed over time. And that's really the biggest thing. People think, well, I have bad credit. That's it. I'm done. I'm done for life. Here I am, 40 years old. I'm done for life. I can never get good. Not true at all. Not true at all. Negative activity, yes, you can stay on there for 7 years, but there's ways to work with the credit bureaus through the Fair Credit Reporting Act if you know how to go through that dispute process, or to work with the creditors as you're paying collections to make sure that you're really helping yourself and to build and establish your credit. And it's not the end of the world. It might take a little bit of time, but it is something that can be done. So the first step is a client goes to myfico.com. They get a copy of their FICO credit report. We do the analysis. It's a free consultation. We allow them to understand what's in front of them, and then we make the decision, not unilaterally, but they decide and we decide, can we actually help you, and does it make sense for us to work together? And then based off of that, we can move forward.
Okay. So I know we want to talk about this as well. Also, what are the do's and the don'ts of building and maintaining good credit?
Absolutely. So I think one of the biggest don'ts is when you have those credit cards, like I was saying before, don't max them out thinking that by doing that, that's going to really be helping you. Because again, your debt utilization can get messed up very easily. No matter what your credit limit is, use your card sparingly once a month, put a tank of gas on it, wait for the bill to come in the mail, pay it in full, simple enough. That's a big don't. Don't max out your credit card. Also, don't start paying these collection companies. Doing that can really cause a lot of problems and make things a lot more difficult than you think it's going to be. The do's: look at your credit immediately. Go to myfico.com, get a copy of your credit report if you want to see where your scores are. If you want to just see your 7-year history, go to annualcreditreport.com. Annualcreditreport.com is completely free. Doesn't count as an inquiry, doesn't hurt your credit. It's only going to show you the 7-year history, not any type of scores. But by going there, you'll be able to see what information is there and what you need to do to address it. But don't put your head in the sand and be like, I don't know, it's too much for me. It's really not that big a deal. It's more of the fear of the unknown. After doing this for 14 years, there's no situation that I haven't heard, and every situation can be addressed with the right action plan and over time. And that's really the biggest understanding is it does take time. If you want to buy a house later this year, today is the day to go and take a look at it. If you want to buy a house 5 years from now, guess what? Today is the day to do it, right? If I could say yesterday, I would, but you just got to start today so you understand what's in front of you now, because if there are issues, it takes time. If there aren't issues, that's great. Now you can just go to sleep at night knowing, hey, my credit's in a good spot, and you're just doing the right things moving forward.
Okay. So what does it look like to work with Bedrock Credit? How was that process? It's been around for a very long time. I've known you from different financial people that I've worked with getting people loans and everything like that. So what does that experience look like for the user that's calling and saying, hey, Steven, you know what? Here's where I'm at. I'd like to get started. What is that process?
Well, so once we go through and create the action plan and we say, okay, does this make sense? Then the client says, yes, that makes sense. Let's go ahead. And at that point, then we talk about cost as well as the time frame and making sure that people understand it could be a process, 6 months, 12 months, whatever it is. And I do offer payment plans to allow them to move forward. But I think the biggest part about working with me, as I was just mentioning offline, you and I were chatting about, is I had a client that just signed up last week and they texted me at 8:00 on Saturday night, sending me a collection letter. And I said, okay, great. And I got right back to him. This company's myself and a couple people. It's a small company. It's a very hands-on approach. We do the heavy lifting in terms of working with the creditors, working with the credit bureaus, and really allowing the client to understand through the process what their role in it, and also giving them the education. A lot of companies are just like, all right, pay us and don't worry about it. We want them to understand what's being done, why we're doing what we're doing, and they're part of it just as much as we're a part of it as well. So it's very much a situation where the two of us are partners in that, in saying, okay, yeah, we're going to be doing this part. This is what you're going to do. And together, we're going to go down the path, holding hands, getting the credit where it needs to go.
All right. Sounds good. And so where can everybody find you? What's the best contact information for people to reach out to Bedrock Credit?
Absolutely. So bedrockcredit.com is my website. You can go there if you want a free consultation. You put in your contact information on the sheet and hit submit. I'll shoot you an email or a call as soon as I can. If you want to follow me on Facebook or LinkedIn, you could certainly do that, Bedrock Credit, or you can look under Stephen Robert. I like to put a lot of tips and understandings of how credit works up there. Again, the do's and don'ts, so that people can constantly be reminded about how the system works and make sure that they're doing the appropriate things. And then, of course, you could always just email or call me. My name is Stephen Robert at bedrockcredit.com. That's my email. And then my phone number, 203-293-6649. It's my office line. Again, feel free to contact me at any moment because I do offer that free consultation. And even if it's just a question about how something works, I'd love to be a resource and give you that information because, again, being a small company, I'm very selective with who I work with, knowing that I can't help everybody in terms of taking them on as a paying client. But I love talking to people similar to what I'm doing with you and your audience right now to educate them as to what credit is all about, how it works, and to make sure they're making the best decisions.
Absolutely. And I also have his contact information in the description box below. So please make sure you contact him, reach out to him. Any questions, anything you have, let him know or reach out to myself. We're definitely here to help you and serve you. Stephen, I appreciate you taking this time to speak with us, to speak with the audience today. We look forward to working with you more in the future.
Andre, thank you so much for having me. Thank you, everybody, for listening today. Hopefully it was very helpful. It was the tip of the iceberg, but at least it kind of gave you an idea of what it's all about. And I look forward to working with you and your clients and anybody in the audience that has any questions. Please feel free to reach out.
All right.